This episode is sponsored by the Global Gaming Awards. Self-nominations are open now until the 24th May. Visit globalgamingawards.com/Vegas to submit your entries and to find out more. Bright lights, big screens and a night's entertainment versus crumbling, rundown and eerily quiet shops. You might be able to have a bet on sport anywhere in the UK, but is the US actually showing how it should be done? How can the UK sports betting market be so far ahead of the US in legislation, but so far behind in experience? All this and more on the GI Huddle. Hello listeners and welcome to episode 2 of the GI Huddle. I'm David Cook and here with me, backed by popular demand of course, it's the GI editorial team. So it's a hello to Tim Poole.
Hello everyone. Howdy
partner to Matthew Enderby.
How's it going?
And hey buddy to Nathan Joyce.
Hello there.
So it's with a thanks actually to Mr. Enderby himself for inspiring the topic of this podcast. Following up on a feature that he wrote for our Sports Betting Focus earlier this year, which was about the differences in sports betting experiences between the US and the UK. I mean, we've now got sports betting regulated in 7 US states, and it just really makes us think about the stereotypes of both markets in terms of one market, the US, pooling it in with a casino and a racetrack experience, as opposed to the UK, which is still very heavily associated with a betting shop experience, which doesn't quite have the same positive image, perhaps, among consumers. So I'll come to you first on this topic, Matt, and then we'll throw this one open to the floor. So what is the general industry feeling about this issue on both sides of the Atlantic?
It is a bit difficult to compare things. You know, the US is a massive country. You've got different states, and each one is going to have its own sort of different positives and maybe detriments as well when it comes to sports betting. But I think you need to look at the legal side to really to start things off. In a lot of states, well, in America, you have to be associated with a land-based venue. You've got to be linked with a casino, and so you've got to have that connection already has to be there. Whereas that's not here in the UK, is it? Operators can set up shops on the high street, and I think they've kind of like just relied on that and just sort of not really developed them any further than they actually are, and that's almost been to their detriment. Like as you said in your introduction there, when you picture these high street betting shops, they're not nice places. You know, you walk in them and you can. You know, if it's raining outside, there's probably somebody smoking in the toilets or something like that. They're just not a very nice environment. There's one down the street from me. There's 3 bin bags sitting out the front of it at any point. You can just see 3 bin bags sitting there. So they're not really inviting. They're not really, you know, the experience there is to stop in and make a bet or just to sort of sit around and that's all that it is. You know, there's nothing sort of that sort of stands them out as special in any kind of way.
For me, it boils down to the separation of online and retail. So in the UK, you've got an online sports betting experience that's been moulded over years and years. In the US, it's brand new, so we can't really compare them. But an interesting question would be, in a few years, how do you compare it when the market's mature? Retail, as Matt says, is where the real difference is. In terms of what the industry is feeling about the issue, I've heard a lot recently about how retail, both in the UK and US, has a big future, but at the same time, every UK operator, and the trend is continuing this week, and it'll continue next week and the week after that, Q1, Q2, Q3, every UK operator is reporting digital growth, but retail decline. It's not so much a trend anymore as just a rite of passage. But in the US, these revered land-based behemoths, as they've been described,
well pronounced.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but certainly they're here to stay for a while, and therein lies the main difference for me.
So yeah, I think the US are trying to make a luxurious experience. I think when you look at gambling within America, going back a few years with Las Vegas and everything, you think about the big lights, the gambling, like the expensive nights out, where I think the UK was never really had that, but I don't think the UK wants that. I don't think the UK needs that, and I think that's where it's different. If you're wanting to bet in the UK, you're looking at it from more of a punter's angle, or for the sake of actually hopefully winning a bit of money, where I think in the US it's just a bit of a thrill at the moment and a bit of more of a holiday sort of seekers.
But why is that? Why is it in the UK that we haven't taken this same attitude in terms of, you know, you go for the casino experience with friends, maybe, you know, have a meal, maybe do something else with your evening at the same time, watch a game while you're in the venue, bet on it, and really enjoy that experience at the same time. But why is it different in the UK? Why have we not got that same mentality, perhaps like we say, going back to the traditional way of doing it in Vegas?
I think it's been kind of easy for operators to just rely on these high street betting shops and not feel that they need to push any further, which is a shame, you know, because there's so much more opportunity there for them to offer something different, for them to be a bit unique in a sense. Not saying it has to be like, I mean, you hear about some of the sports books getting built in the States at the moment. It's like the biggest swimming pool ever and like these massive TV screens, and you know, it doesn't have to be world breaking kind of standards, but you know, it wouldn't take much more of an effort to do something more. So I just think they've relied on what they've had and what successful stories they've had in the past, and just sort of carried on with that.
I'd also be fairly fuming if I had to go to a casino to place a sports bet and have the whole evening there.
Mhm.
If you go there, you're going to get one set of odds, where I can sit in the comfort of my own home, or if I'm out and about, and you can pick up the exact odds you want, or the best odds, or different markets. So the fact that you'd have to leave, sort of like, without sounding proper miserable, leave your home to be able to go and do that, but you're just limiting yourself to particular odds, and that's what it's not. I don't think that's what it's all about in the UK. I think the people in the UK want value when it comes to sports betting.
Yeah, I think it boils down to culture, because I think that's absolutely right about the UK mentality. But I think if you were to ask a US sports bettor, from the sounds of it, they would be very excited about driving to a casino and ordering maybe 30 chicken wings or something like that. I know we'd all enjoy that, and interacting with other bettors and things like that. So I think, Matt's point about the operators, and also, I think it's a cultural difference, really.
You say that though, like if you, like my experiences from going to casinos, always quiet floors with tables and stuff. I wouldn't want somebody, I don't know how it'd work, but I wouldn't want somebody in the corner getting excited about a horse race or vice versa. I don't think those two could work in the same sort of space.
I mean, I think they could find a way to say this is the sports betting venue, like not sort of have it like an open plan type thing, and you know, divide it up a bit more. But I do kind of agree that, you know, they're very different. They're very different things.
Well, just to, you know, personalise a bit more, I should ask the three of you, you know, all being from the UK, of course, as well. What would you say are your own experiences of sports betting? And, you know, also, I guess, is that, you know, but based on your own experiences, is it really a case of the UK perhaps just being a much more mature market, and that's why our experiences have been so different?
I think it definitely boils down to that, because, as I said earlier, the online market here has been years and years, and it's the most competitive one in the world. So really, the US market can't really compare.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, Nathan's point is valid in that in 10 years or so, if everyone in the US could just place a bet on their phone, maybe they wouldn't bother going to a casino, to a sportsbook for that kind of thing.
So my first time in a betting shop was in Belfast. I was on the way to football training with my neighbour, who I just kind of met like the day before. He's like, "Come on down to play for the team." "Oh, I'm going to stop off in this shop on the way in." And I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." You know, like, I like sport. I like, you know, why not have a go? Why not have a go myself? And I didn't really know him, and I got in there, and just straight away I kind of wanted to leave. You know, it just wasn't sort of, as a new person to it. It just didn't seem like the right place for me to learn about it. Like, I didn't feel like I could really ask too many questions, and it was all just like odds and numbers and all different kinds of things. And I was a bit like, "All right, mate, let's get going. You've done your bet now. Let's go to football training."
Yeah, it's not the most inviting of environments. Like, casting my memory back to when I first went into one, I had to drive about 10 miles to go and place a couple of £1 bets on ridiculous accumulators. I mean, I wouldn't even think about doing that anymore.
Yeah.
They're not, like you say, they're not the most inviting, but at the end of the day, I think online has been just expanding for years and years, and just moving away from betting shops. Betting shops aren't really there for the UK punter, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
They're there for sort of the slot machines, potentially greyhounds, and a few horse racing like meetings and stuff like that. But I think the UK punter stays clear for betting shops, and I think that, and they're doing pretty well without it.
Yeah, but would there be like an opportunity to develop it, to offer something, you know, maybe, like we said, not something huge like like the US casinos or anything like that, but just something different, something that's maybe not exactly betting related, but would make somebody want to come in to make a few bets on.
No, I don't think that'd ever happen. I don't think that'd ever happen anymore. The closest you're going to get to that is going to a horse racing meeting or a greyhound meeting, where that's the closest experience you can get.
Yeah, no.
And horse racing is getting more and more popular, but you're not going to see that in a shop down the high street anymore. That's just a world which won't exist anymore.
You know, as an aside, what I personally found quite strange is, this is just from my experience of going to Asper's Casino in Stratford, is that they did have a very large bar area that showed a lot of sport at one time. I'm not sure if they show so much sport now. And they did have a sports betting terminal in the corner of the bar at the same time. But it was just the one terminal. And it's funny because when you go to a lot of casinos, you can go to like Empire Casino in Leicester Square, which has got an infinite number of sports screens showing matches, but they're not really using it to cross-sell with sports betting. Now, is that just because we're not associating sports betting enough with casinos? Or is it just because ultimately the operators can't see a way to monetize it in the same way?
That's an interesting one. Similar to Stratford, there's a bar in Gibraltar which does sports betting terminals and the screens, but then it's sort of to the back of the casino. So it's all the case of bringing together drinking, watching the sport, and then hopefully enticing you into the casino. I think that could be a step if that was to happen, and that could sort of be related back into the UK. But I think that's the closest you're ever going to get, I'm afraid.
I think that does relate to a lot of people in the US right now are saying sports betting revenue is only just taking off, but it is attracting a lot of those sports bettors who come to the sportsbook to then go to the casino or play slots. So there's potential and opportunity in there. Like you say, it's just about whether it's enough for operators to really prioritise it. You know, whether if there's enough potential in the retail opportunity, or they just say let's just focus online.
I think it's in the sorry.
I would like for somebody who doesn't bet, doesn't play casino games or anything like that, doesn't or hasn't done any sports betting before, but they are a sports fan, that might be sort of a way to get them in the door, right? Like to say, oh, here's we can do this, offer you some sports betting, and then also you can have a few drinks and then see where it takes you.
The thing is, with the US just allowing or regulating sports betting, it's basically the equivalent of becoming 18 in the UK, isn't it? Like the first time you could bet on football and European football and stuff, that was quite a buzz. Like whether you're putting £1 on 10 teams to try and win the jackpot or anything like that, that is what the US market is experiencing now. So if you cast your minds back to when you were 18 or when you first started betting to potentially how you bet now, I imagine whether your stakes are high or low, I imagine it's very different. You probably wouldn't be you're like a kid at Christmas when you first go and put your first couple of bets on, but I think because we've matured, we will eventually see that in the US. But at the same time, the US at the moment are just in that very giddy stage, and there's still a massive learning curve. And at the same time, sports like football, for example, they're only just getting big away from betting with the MLS anyway, so that's going to take time to mature, and once that gets more and more fan base, then maybe we will see betting with it.
And just to put this into perspective, we talk about issues that land-based sports betting might have in a place like Great Britain, but looking at the last annual figures, April 2017 to March 2018, it still generated £3.25 billion in revenue. US sports betting, land-based or online, won't beat that in an annual period for some time yet. I mean, even New Jersey's record month was September's $40.4 million. That was presumably due to the new NFL season. So in that sense, why should we be taking note of this new market across the Atlantic, which at this stage is still much smaller than Great Britain and is still obviously far less mature than many other sports betting markets across the world?
I don't think we need to. Like you say there, the figures speak for itself, 3 billion. I think the product over in the UK and sports betting as a whole is, if not close to perfection. I don't think we need to really change it. I don't think we need to add all this excitement and thrill factor and everything. If you're turning over 3 billion a year, how do you actually increase that? I don't think there is a possibility to do that. So I really don't see the need for the UK to even bother to look. The US will obviously get bigger, but it's just going to take a lot of time just because of different states and regulations. We don't have that here with counties, so it's a little bit different. True. But yeah, 3 billion, you're going to be pretty happy with that, aren't you?
I think the potential is there though for the US market, because if you look at the amount of unlicensed, unregulated betting, or whether we can even get a true picture of that, it is massive. That unfortunately, the illegal market in the US, that there is a lot of there's a lot of wages, there's a lot of handle. I mean, in terms of the UK market, it is where it is, and you can't disagree with it being so strong. But I think the potential of US, and the reason so many companies are looking towards the US is because while they're competing and there's so many big companies here in the UK, there's an opportunity for a new revenue stream in the US, and that could really separate them because while it's sort of neck and neck here and there, and so many regulations in the UK, it's tough to, like Nathan says, you're sort of looking at perfection at a very mature market. It's tough to look for more gains from within, but the US offers that new opportunity to really differentiate for companies.
And I think what the US are trying to reach out to, because there's been so much illegal gambling in the US. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to entice people away with this entertainment and this night out and that sort of factor to it, to actually say, look, this is legalized gambling. You can spend X amount in particular casinos, whatever, but you can actually also have a good time. And it's trying to convert that money, which is going around illegally, into legal markets. I mean, that's easier said than done, but I think that's an approach they're trying to take as well.
But when going to the US and getting the general gauge for the image of sports betting among the players and among the media as well. I mean, this is an interesting point for us, obviously, as gambling industry journalists, because we see how much anti-gambling feeling there is expressed by the national media all the time, and obviously the FOB teas have played a big part of in that in the betting shops, of course, as well. So really, I mean, is the whole issue of what the gambling experience is actually like? Is that actually the real reason for general anti-gambling feeling that we see expressed by the British media, especially when it comes to betting shops?
I don't know how to answer that in terms of betting shops, but I feel like there's more. What I'm trying to say here is, if you look at away from betting shops, if you look at towards mobile betting, for example, if you're locked away at home, people don't know. You can't particularly. You don't have that sense of feeling of losing money or anything if you're actually physically there in a casino compared to online sports betting. So I think that's where obviously problems are occurring in the UK, and this is what the US aren't dealing with yet, because obviously of regulations and mobile sports betting is only coming about in a couple of states, and there's still a lot of restrictions there. So I feel that betting shops aside, it is a problem to do with just sort of remote mobile sports betting, which is causing that particular problem.
Yeah, I think the attitudes of some operators might be responsible, because we have seen examples. We defend the industry a lot, and rightly so, because a lot of the industry bashing is not evidence based whatsoever. But some operators in the past have shown examples of maybe taking things a little bit too far, looking at sort of, as we've discussed before, a general customer and not necessarily showing that customer the respect they deserve, and that could be behind or the difference, even in B2B communications between the US and the UK. Because when I've spoken to US companies and operators and suppliers, they're very keen on, whether they really believe this or not, they emphasize the entertainment aspect. So they say, if a customer's lost $100, we want to feel like they've got $100 worth of entertainment. But you don't really hear UK operators saying that. And
No.
even if they do have big responsible gaming departments, this is touching on a different issue, but instead of maybe talking about advertising bans, they should be just realigning their communications and talking about how, we want the customer to have a good time, we want them to, and again, away from all this bet now kind of thing. This is touching on our previous podcast.
Yeah, no,
it's probably a good thing.
I'd agree with that though, because like say, over here, the equivalent is if you go to a horse racing meeting and you lose money, you are still buying an experience, whether you get a hospitality package or not.
Exactly.
But that's where it's going to sort of be very similar.
And then, mobile's been mentioned, so that leads me onto the next point. At the moment, it's not a case of every US state that regulates sports betting regulates mobile at the same time as well. Obviously, New Jersey is still clearly the standout market for that, and obviously there was Nevada before that. Once the market matures to a point where mobile is much more dominant, it does actually make me wonder, will we be talking so much about the sports betting experience even in the US as well once mobile becomes a more dominant factor?
I mean, it will change, yeah. The sort of once people have that opportunity, as Nathan's pointed out a couple of times, it's to sort of stay at home and just make the bet from the comfort of their own sofa and not really have to spend money on a drink or transport or whatever else. Then that will be taken up, and that will definitely become more popular. I think it's in Tennessee they're talking where there are no casinos, they're starting to allow sports betting, and that's only going to be online. So that could be an early example of that kind of trend playing out.
Yeah, so when it comes to differentiating experiences on mobile within different markets, we might not be having the conversation, they might all be the same, but we should be. Because in the UK, if you look, we've, I know Nathan's done a feature on this recently in Trafficology, and on Gambling Insider we've had discussions about retention and acquisition. When I set up a Bet Victor account, I got 3 phone calls within a week asking me to verify the account. I got a barrage of offers and inboxes within my first month, offer here, offer there. Since then, literally 0 communications.
No.
Once you're not a new customer, they're not interested. That's a generalisation, but that's the impression. That was me speaking as a customer there, not as analysis, and that's the impression I got. So obviously that's not a good thing for the operator. But different mobile markets in the US, they can look at that personalisation, and if they get it right, then we could be looking at, this sportsbook in New Jersey is very cool, but this one in Philadelphia here does things a lot differently, and there should be differences.
True, but do you want the bombardment? Again, and that is more catering towards UK customers. And I think obviously with the more mature market, once you've signed up to a new sports operator and you've had like your bonuses or anything there, do you really want them to keep saying to you, hey, we've got this, we've got that? They need to sort of probably understand what you're betting on first, and then make sure you're actually a regular customer with them before actually more care is provided to yourself. Because if you open an account, take advantage of all the offers, and they keep promoting and giving you unique codes and stuff like that, but you don't use them, they're wasting their time. It's falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, but I think there's no reason they can't have the option for you to choose as a customer. So you can choose if you want more, you can choose if you want less. I think something like once or twice a month is still not bombardment and something they can do.
If a customer's turning around and choosing and saying, I want one offer or two offers here, then the operator's not in charge, and the operator's not delivering on their marketing and what they want to produce to their customers. At the end of the day, they want to entice more and put out better deals, but if you're limiting them to one or two, how do you know exactly what you're going to get from it?
Well, that's the consideration, but I think that the technology should be in place, and the marketing team should be in place to be able to analyse it, or to at least have the option there.
Yeah. And then, so just to sum up on both sides, UK and US sports betting experiences, where do we see both markets going from here?
Yeah, I don't think the UK market needs to go anywhere. Like betting shops are closing down, but I think the British media are making that out to be a bigger deal than what it is. The way the online and mobile sports betting's going, betting shops and shops in general, the high street's dying, and it's not going to be a thing which exists in the next 5 to 10 years anyway. So all concentrations needs to go on to online sports betting, and that's exactly what the US will need to do further down the line.
There's definitely like sort of a social element to betting as well, though. Like the more betting shops go down, will the social element disappear itself, or what will happen there? Because I mean, you do compare your bets with friends and stuff, right? And I guess you just do that throughout daily life. You do that in the pub, you do that at work and everything like that. But there is an opportunity for operators to build that hub, to make a spot for for bettors to sort of
I think if
congregate.
that was going to happen, it would have happened within the last 10, 15 years. I mean, now, like you say, you want to come further your mates with a bet, you're going to do that in the pub, and you just get your phone out and be like, I've bet this, you've bet that. You're not going to all gather in a betting shop, because
like something completely different from a betting shop, essentially, or I don't know.
But if they're no longer going to be on the high street because they're not performing well, I mean, how is that going to be replaced? And it's been replaced with mobile sports betting.
I don't know. I still think there's an opportunity for them to make something different there, to make something new. And obviously, it's going to be hard to draw people in. You can bet from home, you can bet from your friend's house. There's no need to physically be anywhere in order to place your bet. But if they make something unique and they combine some kind of offers with drinks and like loyalty to some kind of specific operator, then that could eventually build into something.
Yeah, okay, you say that, but when you look, I'm not just picking on you here.
It's fine. It's
when
fine.
You say that, but bookies, like William Hill, have made requests to try and halve the rent for betting shops to keep them afloat.
Yeah.
So if betting shops go, how are operators going to have the funds or the money to be able to build these establishments which are going to offer all these things which might not be successful when the online market is?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a risk involved. But I mean, what about like just liquor licenses, things like that? Do any betting shops have those? I mean, could they just start to offer? I mean, that is the kind of thing that would get people in.
Could you imagine that in UK betting shops?
I mean, of course, it would have to be managed in a very reasonable way, but
reasonable in the UK and betting doesn't go hand in hand. Like I said, you went to a betting shop and you didn't like that experience when there was no alcohol involved.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You completely need to step away from this image of what a betting shop is and just come up with something new.
I personally can't see it happening ever.
What about sports books within casinos, like we're seeing in the US a lot more? Have you ever seen a William Hill sportsbook in a casino?
Yeah,
in the UK?
There is that element, but then when you look at the UK and the anti-gambling and stuff, if you're then having a drink, I think that Bet Regret have just done an advert now where there was a lad smashed in a kebab house, walking out, and then goes to place a bet on like a Panama football game, isn't I think the British media will come across that and paint that in a negative light, being like, oh, you've had a drink, are you going to be betting sensibly? And I think that's how the British media would go. Whether that's right or not, whether you're trying to build an experience, I think straight away that just gives the British media an excuse to go, right, gambling, drinking, that's just even worse, isn't it? You're just setting yourself up for a fall.
Yeah, well, the casinos, though, generally have a very different image.
Exactly, because you can drink in a casino, right? And it's all...
Yeah.
But I guess, like, you know, things are heavily enforced. There's security walking around there all the time. So many people working there, keeping an eye on you. And
True, but you're trying to merge just two different worlds. They're so similar but so far apart.
I think a potential bridge could be VIP players. So if you think of betting shops in the UK, and we've discussed everything that's wrong with them. But if you look at casinos in Macau, for instance, land-based casinos, and that's the gambling hub, that's all about VIP revenue. And if you, for example, had like a glamorous betting booth or something, booth sounds seedy, maybe maybe if you had a glamorous betting section, and you had endless amenities, like you'd have a VIP booth at a stadium. And you could have this betting booth, which would be sort of just like being a live box in a stadium. And a VIP player who's going to a casino, who's interested in sports, might just go for that. And I think if there's a future for retail in the UK, it may have to be something along those lines, because the betting shop format we're discussing is clearly the absolute reverse of that, and doesn't seem to have a future.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But then at the same time, you're looking for a potential replacement for betting shops, and I quite like the idea of the VIP experience. But then straight away, you're eradicating 99% of punters.
Yeah.
So the stake's going to be higher, but you're never going to get back what the other people are trying to bet in shops.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's right. In terms of revenue, it may work out for the operator. But yeah, in terms of the overall customer, I mean, it almost sounds like we're in the 1990s, and we're saying it's the internet's going to take over. That's kind of what it sounds like, especially with the US. There's a big emphasis on retail, and a lot of US politicians really don't seem to understand that mobile and online is pretty much already here and has been for 10, 20 years. But yeah, from the sounds of everything we've been saying, online is the future, and retail.
It's not the future; it's now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
it's here now.
And I think either I would say either UK retail outlets try and mirror this US approach, or slowly phase it out, because I think the way it's currently going, in 5-10 years, is it going to be worth having these retail shops? And if let's say all retail shops closed, and I'm not saying close all retail shops because people will lose their jobs, and obviously it's an industry, but the amount of as you said with your question earlier, David, the amount of anti-gambling sentiment in the UK would probably reduce, not fully, but certainly to a great extent, I'd say.
Or will it move?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it would just, there's always going to be something that mainstream media is going to say, like, oh, this is terrible, this is absolutely ridiculous.
We shall see. Well, I urge you to hold back the tears, listeners, but that brings us to the end of episode 2 of the GI Huddle. Just a reminder that the GI Huddle is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play Music and YouTube. Please also keep checking into gamblinginsider.com. Our new Gambling Insider print magazine for May-June should be with members soon as well. Keep checking into our GI Friday newsletter, and we'll see you soon.